This is the introductory video for News Platform 1.0 for Spring 2017. So the current problem is basically that news websites nowadays, they provide news, but the news that they provide, they actually hard input their data. And a lot of these news don't provide a way for the user to search for news. So what our project is about is to let the product owner decide what news he wants the website to be about. So the product owner, for example, can have many websites set up with this same platform, and each website can be based on different types of news that he wants. Also, a user can, for example, search through the news with the search bar. And that's a screenshot of our homepage. Now, the way we designed this system is that it is a 4-layered architecture. At the very bottom layer, we have our database, which is an MS SQL database. It is hosted on a GoDaddy MS SQL cloud database server. Above that is 2 layers, which are part of the web server. And the data access layer was implemented in C#. This is a layer that consists of classes, and each class is for each stored procedure that is in the database. So each class has an execute method to execute the stored procedures. And the main functionality of this layer is to store or retrieve data from the database. Above that layer is the web API layer, where we also have all the controllers and all the business logic of the web server. This entire layer was also implemented in C#. And above that is the user interface, which was implemented in HTML, CSS, Angular, JavaScript, and Bootstrap. It's a web application. It's also mobile responsive. And so the client application is the one that communicates with the web server through using the HTTP protocol. So client requests and web server responds. This is our minimal class diagram. The most important class here is the all news controller. This is the endpoint of the web server where client applications make HTTP requests to. Now, this endpoint is also it also accesses all the controllers and the data access layer. The controllers are also the ones that access the data access layer, depending on what functionalities needs to be done. And the global class is the class that starts up the application. It extends from HTTP application. And the all news controller is extending from API controller. So that is the API access point of the web server. This is a sequence diagram for how the news are basically displayed. The client application makes HTTP requests to the all news controller. Now, the all news controller is the one that calls on the database to retrieve all the news ordered by date, and it also requests for the Twitters and for the latest tweets and the YouTube and the latest YouTube videos. Our news stay updated. Every hour we we are constantly updating the news that we store in our database. So every hour, our web server is calling the Bing News APIs and the Google News APIs and storing this fetch data into our database. And of course, the reason we have a database is because when client applications make requests to our server, the data that we provide is coming from our database, not from the API calls that our web server makes. And so also we do not store similar data. We only store data if there is not already similar data that exists in our database. Our user can use our search bar, and this will make an HTTP request to the web server and pull out news data from our database based on this search. And here's a screenshot that displays how the search feature is used and displayed. And that is the application we built for senior project.